Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who shouldn't forget that his head can be easily cut off.
Tim Longo.
The more I know, man, the worse you appear.
I should not forget that.
You should not. That will come up later.
There are definitely some brutal scenes. I mean, I know I'm still very far behind you, but there's some
more to come.
Yeah, just like some rough stuff with these little pixel characters.
Yeah, we are, of course, playing Final Fantasy Tactics. It has a lot of the expressiveness of... I also realized, here we're going to go straight off topic and talk about something we didn't discuss in pre-show. I realized one of the reasons why why the character design has no noses.
Mm-hmm.
It's because with the sprites, they can then make the eyes huge. It doesn't have to read,
Yeah, the nose will throw it off.
Yeah, then they don't have to put 3 pixels in there on every face to try to be the nose. They can have something that's roughly the shape of the face that you see in the portrait, and they're a little rounder typically. And then but have the eyes be there because they actually occasionally use the eyes for expressiveness in the like you can see them blink or look at a direction in the faces, and so they have no mouths either, as far as I can tell. It's mostly it's a round blob with really big eyes. They're not very wide, but they're tall, so it's cool.
Such an interesting decision. Character decision. But I mean, in a pixel world like this, I guess you can see it to some degree. But again, I know we talked about this last episode, but I feel like I've seen them do it before. So I don't know if it's an aesthetic one of the sort of, in their hand of cards for different aesthetics that they use sometimes.
Could also just be a 16-bit era thing, right? So
that's true. It could be an era thing that we're just not picking up on.
Yeah, that we're not super familiar with. So anyway, I noticed that in one of the little in mission cutscenes at one point, like, I can see Delita's eyes literally looking, from this direction to that direction, because they have just enough play to move the eyes, and it's because they're large. Otherwise, it wouldn't read. It wouldn't read well enough. So it was interesting. Anyway, let's get back into it. I have been having some sleep problems. So as Tim said, I'm a bit ahead of him because when you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep, you might as well play hours of Final Fantasy Tactics. And it's kind of got its hooks back into me like it did back when I originally played it. So I will also settle the fact that I did in fact interact with all the systems in the game in the past. As I've gotten into these other classes, I've been like, of course I learned, I have a Lancer now. I'm like, yeah, you can't have a Lancer and not have learned how to add the jobs or the skills,
the abilities.
The abilities. So there would be no point. So I definitely learned all that in the past. Back then you would read the manual. So,
right.
Something we sometimes forget here, and you would read it in detail. Yeah. And you might find it's helpful.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. I'm sure there'll be some revelations. I've said this time and time again, and pawn this off as laziness, but also I still kind of like the mystery of it, like playing especially an older game where the usability isn't in your face with tooltips or whatever all the time, even though the select button in this tooltips are fairly effective. But just like the macro, design of it all, which you usually get from a manual, I just kind of like, unearthing it and having those revelations. So,
yeah, it's fun to explore. It's fun to dive in and be like, what does this do? What is this? Well, I've only got this many buttons. What do they do?
Especially this game. Yeah. And all the different ways that things interact, or why does this job not work? Or how did that job unlock, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So,
one thing that remains opaque to me is the Zodiac stuff.
Yeah, right. They mentioned that in the tutorial. What little I did read in the tutorial, or you know, yeah, read essentially.
I mean, I know that they all have it on their portrait, but I've literally never looked at it. I couldn't tell you what any of my characters, oh, I wonder if that's the only reason they ask you for your birthday at the beginning of the game.
Well, supposedly, again, like having them different ones working together, playing together, or fighting together does have an impact.
Yeah, no, but I mean, at the beginning when you name your character, it also asks your birthday.
Yeah, right. I'm sure
it probably sets the Zodiac for that character. I don't remember if I put in my birthday accurately. I often don't. I often just use the Unix birthday, 1/1/1970, to as my. Nope, that's it. That's as old as I am. Whatever. It's close enough.
I usually use 1/1/1900.
Oh, good for you.
A lot of websites, default to that. And I was like,
that's fair.
Just so it's close. I mean, I'm close.
yeah, you're not that far off. Let's talk, I guess, since we're kind of already diving into the mechanics a bit, let's go straight into the crunch of it all. One of the things you were talking about in pre-show is just like the complexity of the ordering mechanics, which can be troubling. So, and then I can end that discussion with a little sidebar to a series of events that happened to me because I've gotten to know the systems pretty well. Even if I don't always know what order things are going to happen in, there are times when I'm like, I can see through the matrix, like, see what's going to happen, and use it to my advantage. But you were finding it a little, I don't know, hard to read at times.
Yeah, it's not predictable. Well, I mean, so it is predictable. How do I? It's a hard topic to talk about clearly for me, but I'm going to use PC tactical games, unfortunately, as my counterpoint here. And I'm not blaming console or Final Fantasy, but I do think that is at the heart of some of the challenges, because I think and maybe not having played the Ogre Tactics games or whatever they're called, maybe that's where some of the lineage here is coming from directly. And so people don't really notice or care because they're coming from those games and they're used to this kind of stuff. But for me, coming from like the XCOM world and loving those sorts of games, even the original XCOM, but obviously the modern ones solving this and many tactical games solving this, there's that concept of knowing the turn order, knowing the limitations and capabilities of each unit, knowing the timing of when things are going to happen, and to your point, kind of seeing through the matrix and kind of doing all the sort of like predictive, the predictive nature of it as a player of like, okay, I want this to happen, and then that enemy is going to do this, and then this happened. I'm going to use them, pit them against this character, and then, all this kind of stuff happens. And there's always the randomness in there. XCOM uses percentages and other things to cause
this
randomness.
Does too.
So, yeah, right. This does too. You're right. So there's some of those tried and true methods, but and I think, though I haven't really found it all, I think all the information is technically there for me. A simple example is turn order. If you hit triangle at certain points, you get a sub menu that gives you, you can go to options if you want, but also it has unit order. And you can see the list, and it actually goes, for some reason, it scrolls multiple rounds. So it's like got 30. So it just repeats, it repeats the order.
The information. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it repeats. So maybe they do that because sometimes units would have a different turn later.
Well, yeah, if somebody were hasted or slowed,
they might. In this round, they may not have the same turn that they do in the next round. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that's likely why they do it. But anyway, you can get to the information, but it's not like you can have it up on screen while you're making decisions, right?
Right.
So I'm like looking at this. I'm like, okay, I want this creature to be where they are when this goes off, but I'm not sure if they're going to be.
Right.
So I go to the turn order and then I was like, where's their turn? Blah, 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 blah. You see where I'm going?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that just became too, like, I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this every time. So I just basically try to remember the turn order and then see what happens and then try to predict. But sometimes, like, they move out of the way when I didn't want them to, and I wasted a spell or something. And, it's just not very player friendly in that regard. But to your point on seeing the Matrix, I'm betting that maybe you're already to this point a second time in your life. I'm betting there's a point where you inherently know enough about enemies, different jobs, your own character's jobs, where it does kind of become second nature a little bit. And you kind of you can predict without having to look at all the stats. Like sometimes I have to go look up how long a spell is going to be to cast, because I need to predict, where it's going to hit when and blah, blah, blah. And, if a lot of the spells that I'm using now are unit targeted, so it'll try to go off wherever it is. But the funny thing about that one is that if you're not careful, right, of course, you know where this is going.
Oh, yeah.
I target this character, and then they go right up next to the character who's casting fire, and then they cast fire on themselves.
Right.
Or
funny you should say that.
Okay, so yeah, that's probably where you're going. Or my favorite one is casting protect, and then
getting one of them. Yeah,
and then getting one of them is like, okay, great, just protected. I just put a shield on the enemy. So it is a long-winded way to say that these are tried and true elements of tactical games, and you need them in there. But because tactical games, one of the beauty of them is the gribbly bits and the getting into all of this sort of turn order, and basically tactical games are like great for min-maxers, right? Who love to optimize every turn. But if your game isn't delivering the information to you that you need to optimize, for me, I find it very frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, it's especially coming from a PC where you would have more resolution. Keep in mind, it's a PlayStation 1, so 320 by 240 or whatever. So like, like, no, I know that's hard to overcome right there. I mean, they do use some number bubbles for things like, how many turns till somebody's going to die. You could imagine putting that stuff in, but the way I approach it is not like, it's been a long time since I've been that kind of crunchy player. I'm a much more reactive player now. So what I typically do is at the beginning of the battle, when typically the two armies are apart, I just pay attention, and just like, okay, I'm moving my characters. I pretty much know the order they're going to move in anyway, because I've been using them all the time. So I know who's going to go first, etc. It's going to be my monk. He's always going to go first. Almost always. Actually, at a certain point, my wizard surpassed him for some reason that I'm not really clear on, but whatever. I kind of know what that order is going to be. So I'm really just paying attention to what their order is going to be relative to my order. So I can think about like, okay, well, I'm going to use my mage to try to get to this person because I know they come a long time after my mage moves, or they go before my mage goes, either way. So I know they're going to be in a position locked long enough that I can target a spell and not, damage myself. So that's the one thing. Also, I just miss a lot. It just happens, certain things that I do, I actually have to wait. I've mentioned the Lancer earlier that jumps and targets a space, not a person, or not an enemy. So I've taken to not doing that early in the battle when everything feels a lot more chaotic, and doing it later in the battle when characters start to get pinned in and they can't move very much anyway. Because you're boxing them in, and now it's like, oh, I can just jump in there with my character, because I know they can't move because I've got people on two sides and they're up against the walls or whatever. So that happens too. Like, so it really kind of depends. So.
Well, and it makes you, I think that's a little bit of the Matrix bleeding through there, to your point. Like, I don't think they want, to your point about the console and screen space and stuff, like, they're designing this game for their platform, which is a good thing. And I guess, we've already referenced Mario Rabbids before. That's like a modern extension of this, right? It's like, okay, we are making a certain type of tactical game, and we're going to strip out things that aren't necessary for this platform. And in this case, they could have done higher res, but it's more about an audience and a goal of what kind of tactical game they're making. But to your point on the mate, like the thing that I'm only now scratching the surface on, are things like map usage and boxing people in and line of sight and all of these other sort of, secondary and tertiary elements that are really important, but that when you're just learning the game, you're not thinking about. But to your point, there are, facing direction and all of these, that's where I think the brilliance of the game starts shining through once you become that good at it. But just like my experience with other Final Fantasy games, the learning curve is so brutal.
Yeah, it's pretty steep.
And the grinding curve is so brutal. That's really been my hurdle, as it was with Final Fantasy 9 and 6. It's like I don't put the time in really, and then by the end of the game, you're just under leveled. Yeah. And for me, I'm finding that at the beginning of the game.
You're finding it, now.
Yeah. So, but those few moments when I realized I could box somebody in, and then I use that element to ensure my tactics are going to succeed, those are really great feeling moments.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm now at the point where I'm often using the enemy's tactics against them because it's, they're locked in. So the example I had this was in a big story battle. There was a target that, you had to eliminate. And it was towards the end. There were a bunch of characters still on the board on both sides. All my characters were up, and their characters were kind of slowly fading away, and there were a handful left. One of those was a black mage, and it targeted one of my characters. And then that character got to move.
Oh no! Yeah.
Before the spell went off, so I moved it up against the target, the objective.
Wow!
And then the blast goes off. It kills the target, which was amazing.
Yeah.
The enemy mage levels up. And it's like doing that little jumping up and down animation after it just killed its own general, and then the mission ends in victory. The next thing is like that person jumps up and down as they go job level up or whatever. And I was just like, that was a perfect tactics game moment. This tiny little gem, lots of little bits. It reminded me of we went to that Clint Hawking talk about people using the AI in Splinter Cell, to comic effect. I mean, basically,
if you say so.
Yeah. So he had this scene that he broke down where it's like it depended on the type of guard and what they saw, and there was a blast, and so they used the fact that they knew what the voice line was going to be because it was this particular type of guard. I mean, it's like this this whole chain of events that the player had to understand, and this kind of felt that way when this happened to me in my game. I guess it was, early this morning. It was just this moment where I'm like, I didn't know for sure it was going to kill him. I just knew that I was going to win very shortly thereafter because it was a pretty powerful spell. And my character didn't even go down, which was even better. That's
amazing.
Great.
Well, and moments like that, to maybe your Splinter Cell example too, moments like that cement a game like this in your head.
Yeah.
Forever, maybe not forever, but it becomes one of your favorite games because you're like, wow, you feel clever. You feel like you outsmarted them. It's also funny, feels like an unintentional thing that, the developers did not intend for it to happen, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But
I mean, this is why I love Spelunky, right? Spelunky is a platformer that is filled with these moments because it's got this clockwork of things, and it's just a series of events will happen to you, that ends in your death. and you'll just sit there and you'll laugh because well, I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, that's
I
amazing.
blasted and I somehow missed the spikes, but then I tipped over this wall and I fell and I landed next to the blue snake and it hit me with poison, but I lived through that and a bat got me. And you're like, what? I can't believe I just watched this play out for 5 seconds, while I couldn't do anything and just had to watch.
Yeah, that's
special. Also, since I'm mentioning Spelunky, people who are on the Discord know, I want everybody to know that I finally, after how many years of playing, I finally had a turkey this week. With
my goodness, people! Yeah. Episode 390.
Yep, yeah,
I think
it happened. 390.
It happened.
I've been playing. I've probably been playing Spelunky the whole time we've been doing this podcast. I'd have to look, but I bet that is true. I had it on the Vita before, so I don't actually have that anymore.
So can you explain?
Right.
The turkey.
The turkey. So a turkey is it's a fan term. It's not in the game, although the sequel has a literal turkey in it because of the fan term. But so Spelunky has a daily challenge, which is like a random seed that is shared. The developer, Mossmouth, went and recoded the game to be deterministic. So that nothing, from a seed, all the chests generate the same thing, everything, all the levels get generated the same way if you have the same seed. And that number is, generated and put on the internet every day. And every day there is a daily challenge. You can only do it once, and it's for that seed for that day. And doing 3 dailies in a row is considered a turkey.
Succeeding at them.
Yeah, succeeding at them. Doing the hell run, which is when you go all the way down to the very lowest levels and you beat what's his name, Emperor Yama, I guess, the Lord of the Underworld at the very, very bottom of Spelunky, and get the big prize. So I managed to do that. I will sometimes go weeks without winning one daily. So, I'm not really getting better at the game. I just enjoy it. And it's this thing I do once a day, and, it's just part of my morning routine. But yeah, I finally.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And then the next day I failed. So, it's,
the clockwork,
the beat goes on.
I assume the clockwork of it all, the cards just played out the way.
Yeah, it could be that I finally got 3 in a row that were just tuned to me, to my
that's right.
General strats or whatever. Yeah.
They
although then the day, so I had 3 in a row, then a failure, and then the next day I had a success again. So maybe I am getting better, but so
amazing. Well, Thanks for the update. That's good. It's a good tangent to go off because it needs to be stated. Yeah, I never thought you'd do it, for the record. So.
It's fair. I never thought I'd do it, to be honest. I mean, it was literally just like a couple weeks ago. I think, I think I actually wrote about it in my daily journal. I don't think I'm ever going to get a Spelunky turkey. I don't feel like
your journal. I don't think I'm ever going to go out with that person. It's just not going to happen.
Just not going to happen. So.
Dear diary.
Dear diary, Timmy made fun of me again today. Anyway, back to tactics. Anyway, people aren't here for my Spelunky hour.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. All right. So we talked about the turn order mechanics. Let's talk about. I guess let's just talk about the grind and the map. Kind of the macro stuff that's going on. You've not done any grinding. I did a lot at the beginning, and now pretty much don't have to. So
story of our lives.
Yeah, worked out well for me so far. I also just kind of finally grokked it and was like, oh, right. And the skills started coming back.
Yeah.
So
the muscle memory of it all and stuff. Yeah. I mean, I have done some grinding.
Kind of have to.
But it wasn't, what basically my pattern right now is I hit a story level, which inevitably is going to be like is it true? Not every story level, but almost every story level so far I have not beaten the first time.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And then, so that's like why I'm going at a snail's pace. I think if I were to commit, I don't know, a few hours at least, like you did to grind, just before continuing on, then, but every time then I would probably be in better shape. But every time I finish a story level, I want to see the next story level. So I push forward inevitably. Then,
there's definitely a tension there. One of the things I actually also do, and this is not to grind, but it does have the effect of grinding, is that after I succeed at a big mission, especially if I'm like changing up my gear or if somebody has, reached a new level or something like that, I will go back and revisit some of the cities to see if they have new gear.
Oh yeah, I just noticed that. Yeah, no, I have been upgrading gear. Yeah, okay, but not. I might have missed some, but yeah. I didn't realize that the gear.
So I'll go all the way back to Igros Castle and be like, does Igros Castle have new? Because they tend to have good stuff for knights, and Ramseth.
Oh, so they. Oh, really interesting.
Yeah, so, the shops are not the same in every town.
Oh my goodness! So that is quite interesting because that's pushing you through random
exactly.
battle areas.
It's natural. It's a natural grind. Yeah.
So there's reasons to go to different shops. I did not realize that.
Yeah.
I thought it was just story based.
That is unusual.
All the shops.
Yeah, that's unusual for Final Fantasy RPGs. It's a definitely. I don't remember that being a thing. You'd sort of feel like playing a Final Fantasy game is like, oh, I'm at this level. Shops will have this stuff now. It feels gated to story content or whatever, and it's just every shopkeeper has the same list at some point. Which honestly,
there are some in 6 where they know that they have specific stuff. But you're right. Generally,
in general, it's like, oh well, at this point, I can expect to find, certain things are always there. The potions, I think, are basically once they unlock, they all have the same potions, but the other gear not. So. This city will have more like rods, things for mages and priests and whatever chemists.
Interesting.
And then, but if you go to a castle, they're going to have all the sort of martial gear. So they'll have armor and, swords and spears once you get to that point, etc. So that's a good thing to know too. And then another thing I noticed or picked up on this time that I don't think I ever saw in the past. Because at the beginning of the game, you're not rewarded for going into the bar. If you go into the bar, there's rumors, which is like, basically get the fiction
lore.
Get a bunch of lore. And there's more and more of it, and it's like, it clears if you read it, I guess. So, but that list can just keep growing. But you also, at a certain point, they start having quote unquote propositions, which are missions that you can send team members on that are going to take a certain number of days.
Oh, like asynchronous stuff?
Yeah, you're not going to do any play. It's just going to happen. It just happens. It's Assassin's Creed does it.
Assassin's Creed did it, but Metal Gear did it as well.
Yeah, games. So it's like, I'm going to send this person off and they're going to level or they're going to get some money.
They could have all gotten it from this game. I don't know.
It could be. From. I don't know where it came from either.
That's cool. Yeah.
But here's the thing. You kind of have to keep track of where they are because that's where they'll come back to. They won't just rejoin you. They'll come back to that bar. So you have to go back to that bar.
Oh, how funny.
And go in and kind of like call them back, I think it's called, which if you do it too early, the game will say, oh, if you do this, you'll have wasted all this time and money because you have to buy in. It's like, oh, you pay this much, but you get a 20x return. Or they'll come back, or they'll be like, oh yeah, they're done. And they'll give a little report about what happened. So it's very, so
I was wondering why you would have more characters than you need typically. And this might be a reason.
It's a reason. Also, if characters die, right? I mean, XCOM style,
Yeah,
suit up,
yeah,
son,
yeah.
you're going to Mars, right? So, it's your backbench, in case
I
something
just mean
bad
like
happens.
most of the maps that I've played so far, I can't bring everybody in with me.
Correct. Right.
So it's
No, I
like,
mean, if somebody dies in a mission, then the next mission, you're going to need somebody new in that slot, right?
yeah.
So unless you're like me and you're like, oh, I lost somebody, I'm going to reboot.
yeah.
So
Yeah. So I mean,
there's reasons to go back to the other towns, I guess.
That's good to know.
Point.
That's good to know. But it's interesting that that's going to naturally pull you through some random encounters too. And through all the JRPGs we played, I'm fairly on the record saying I'm not a random encounter fan. So
the series have gone away from them as well. Players have spoken. Players don't like them either. The modern Pokemons don't have them. I mean, the creatures are in the environment. If you want to go after them, you can see them.
Yeah, but you can see them.
But you can avoid them, right? Typically. I mean, and then the same is true, of later Final Fantasies and things like that. 12, for example, you can run around. You can basically avoid them. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes... but they're in the world there, and you can actually see them much the way I described with the Pokemon game. And I think the same was true of the car one, 14.
15. I was just going to say, I'm watching
15.
some of the community
15.
streams. For the Final Fantasy 15 that they were playing.
Right.
I think it was maybe I was watching Lost Lake. I apologize if I forget who it was, but yeah, it looked like to me that the creatures were just running around, kind of MMO style.
Yep. Yeah, they're in there and you can go, and usually they change the mechanics up then. So it's like, oh, you can get a surprise attack if you can sneak up on them. And if one manages to run into you because you went a little too close, but then pointed the camera in the opposite direction, they'll get a sneak attack on you as well. So that can happen. So they've gone more to the kind of more player controlled stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the things you'll see if you are revisiting those maps is that the maps themselves will also progress in terms of enemy types.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what other enemy types you've seen, but yeah, they basically, what I imagine is happening is they have a table and then they just move the window of the table. Like, rows 1 through 4, you might get enemies. And then it's like, oh, but you're this level. So now 2 through 5 and, 3 through 7 or whatever, is my guess, in terms of, typically that's how you would do something in a memory kind of efficient way, is you have a table that you pull from, but you have a sliding window to determine where you pull from it, for performance and memory reasons. But you want everything to be super compact. That would be my guess.
Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. It's cool to think about how behind the scenes they're doing some of that stuff on a console like this.
Yeah.
I mean, just QAing a game like this gives me hives.
Yep, I know.
I'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're both not in QA. I mean, we know what we meant when we wrote that code. Just because it doesn't do that, it's not our fault. We thought of the right thing. So that's a fun thing. So even going back to like the Squeegee Woods, or there's one with the valley that has this river through it. Like the first time I went through there, it was like, I don't know, skeletons and bombs or something. And, or actually human characters. I think there's a story mission in that valley. And, when I came back through there later, I think I was going back to a city to see, can I get a good spear now? I went back through and it was like these, like, they look sort of like illithids, mind flayers.
Oh, wow.
Like these humanoids with squid-like heads, or at least heads with tentacles off the bottom. I think just 2 tentacles. One was like a Pisco demon, I think, like Pisces. And then the other was, I think all the demons might be Zodiac symbols because I saw the Taurus demon as well.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I did meet one of those. I'd lost that battle, but I saw a Taurus.
And an aqua something, some other, they were basically a reskin, color swap, palette swap. One was slightly darker. I saw it coming through that space.
And you're convinced the maps are the same themselves?
Pretty sure they're the same.
I guess it's just a perspective. Because there's this hill and this really actually quite tall hill in the woods one that I had encountered, and I was like, I don't remember this hill here. So then I made the assumption that the essentially the height map of it is maybe randomized, but that's maybe too much.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but I can't say that it's not true. Like maybe there's a chance that you get a different map. So I don't know, and I just haven't. Although I've gone over those particular two quite a lot. But where your starting position will change from time to time.
Right.
And there is a greater challenge on one side of the river versus the other. Like starting in this corner is bad. So, I definitely found in the valley one, like, I lost in a map that I totally should not have. It was like cats and a couple of these squid people. I was like, oh, this should be a cakewalk. And I just got owned. And it was entirely because of crossing the river. Like I thought all the characters would be able to get across. Turns out like 2 could get across easily and the rest were in deep doo-doo. So it was much better to like change my tactics and wait.
Oh, interesting.
So it was interesting because of course, originally I'd played it from what I now think of as the good side of the river. And I had crossed over to get at the enemies. And now I'm like, well, now I know why, because there's places they don't want to go because getting out is, like you move slower in water and, it can take you forever to get around in the river.
Yeah. I'm starting to see a lot more. Yeah. I mean, the map dynamics, as far as like the geometry goes, I definitely underestimated. I don't know what in my head I had for this game, kind of assumptions I was making, but I definitely was underappreciating the map design for sure. Especially there's the river stuff, the water stuff I haven't really encountered too much yet, but height is definitely, and those who can jump and those who cannot jump, and the map design about like, well, if you can't jump up 2 squares, then what's the route to get up to the top of where you want to get to, especially like in city or town maps where you're getting on top of buildings and stuff. So it's really interesting to see how that flow, of course, line of sight and also blocking people in. It didn't occur to me right away that you can't pass through enemies.
Right.
And so, and if you can't jump up and you're against a wall or in a corner, I didn't. So it's cool to kind of uncover that there's more going on to the map design than I realized.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm pretty partial to the sort of built environment maps. I really like them because they're recognizable, and I mean, even though they're not like, I don't think any of them are necessarily generic. Maybe the first couple, that have the randomness are, kind of more are, they feel kind of, it's a field with some rocks in it. Like, okay. But all the stuff that's built in, with buildings feels really cool. There's a later mission that you'll find where you're on the rooftops in some slums and you really feel like you're on top of
I played
that one.
I played one in a slum area, yeah.
Oh, okay. So with the stone, does that mean anything to you? No. Okay. All right. No. I thought that might be later. That's coming up for you, I think. But yeah, there's another one that feels even though it's not like, I mean, everything's kind of the same. It feels a lot higher because of how the scene is described, like higher off the ground, and like the types of characters that are there. I don't think you've met the sort of main character in that little subplot yet. So he's coming up. But I really like those sorts of things, especially because of the sudden challenge, because I have a monk in my party. He tends to move first or second, and moves really fast, and also can climb up a lot of things that the other characters can't. And I forget that often. And I'll go and I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to bring everybody up and over this wall, and then, we'll be good. And I'll bring him, and he'll go up and he'll be on top of the wall. I'll be like, cool, he's going to kind of cover things here. Maybe another character can get up there, and then everybody else has to go through this doorway. And I'm like, oh no, this is not going to go well. Because I'll forget that's going to be an issue. You can't target because you can't see, so like a lot of the stuff that you do as targeting over a wall won't work. I've had some real nail biters in situations like that because I am like discovering while I play, whoops, I didn't think that through. And there's a real nail biter of like, I have several characters who can throw Phoenix Downs and high potions. And, I'm basically just trying to get those people into position where they can revive people at the right time so that we can get through the battle. It's very tenuous.
I've been very surprised at how many nail biters I've had and how it feels for a tactical game too. I mean, a good tactical game, you do want those, but been very dramatic and very like adrenaline inducing for me. I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know if I'm going to pull this off, and then you do just in the nick of time, and the ordering of things all works out. Like that's the other anxiety that I have on the ordering thing is if you don't get somebody up at the end of the battle, they're dead forever.
No,
right?
No.
Oh, okay. So
it's if they count down past 0.
Oh, okay.
Over the time of the play.
Got it. Okay, I've been paranoid because I thought they had to be actually awake.
No.
Before
the assumption is because you won, you'd now treat your wounded or something like that.
Because I've actually prevented my characters from taking out the last enemy sometimes because I'm like, no, wait, I need to get this person
don't do
up.
that.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't do that. Yeah. No, you get anybody who hasn't died.
Yeah, so it's the timer. As long as the timer's going.
That timer counts down. If they turn into a crystal or a treasure box, typically a crystal for your characters, then you won't.
Then it's over,
One of the other things I remember doing, I'm not doing it this time. I mean, it happens, but when I originally played this game, I would not kill the enemies. I'd box them into a corner, just kind of take their damage and like heal the people who are boxing them in. So that
you could get chests.
I could get all the chests and crystals of all the people dying. So the crystals, I don't know if you've gotten any crystals. Some
of them give you skills.
Yeah, you can learn abilities from them. So that can be really, can be and might not be really useful. But like my priest got a cure +2 from that, and I actually moved her back to be a chemist after that because I was like, oh, actually, better if she's a chemist because I can get her to have the auto potion skill. But that's how I played it back when I played it, 20 years ago, like we've talked about. I was like, I'm gonna, just talk about min-maxing. Like I'm gonna squeeze everything out of this map, and every map was like that. Now it kind of happens, but it actually ends up being more tactical because either team obviously can claim those crystals. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you pick them up so that the enemy can't heal, by picking them up. They're not going to get the skill ups. They're just going to go back to full health. And it's like, oh no, I've been whittling down this one annoying archer or something worse, like a summoner or something that has magic that it has exhausted. But now it goes and picks up a crystal. It's got all its magic back, and it's like, oh, suddenly summons are back on the table, and it's like, oh man, that's
yeah.
So it's really, there are those kind of mid battle goals that will crop up on occasion because turns out you knocked out this person really fast, and then everybody else was a grind, and it's like, oh, I got to make sure I'm the one to pick up that crystal when it turns.
The tactic, like watching the timer and basically making sure that somebody's nearby to grab it.
Right. The right person is nearby because, of course, it doesn't help you if it turns after you've moved. So it's got to be like somebody who's late in the order, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a good example of the layered depth of tactical games, and this is obviously we're playing this for a reason. I mean, it's got a lot of that going on. And to your point on the min-max playthrough of this and really like squeezing everything out of it, like this game is perfect for that.
Oh yeah,
because there's just so many options. Yeah, and that's as maybe a segue, but the job matrix and the ability job matrix and all of that stuff is to jump topics a bit.
Yeah, of course.
That for me is the revelation I did not anticipate for this game. And I think it's my favorite part so far, and also way more than I just had realized. I guess I didn't, I mean, there isn't, we talked about this, I think a little bit in the first episode, but there isn't another Final Fantasy game that handles it exactly this way. But I keep calling it a matrix because, every job has abilities per slot. I don't know what all the slots are called, but it's like there's the ability list, and then there's multiple lists side by side if you go
right.
left.
There's like two battle abilities, like attack abilities. One, I think of it as the counter ability, but like a reaction.
Yeah.
I guess you'd say in D&D. There's one that has to do with movement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then one like one defensive one or something.
Yeah, that one can be also that one I think feels like the one that's sort of a class-based. It can be an enabler. For example, you can put in, like, if you purchase the ability as a knight to equip a sword, which you get when you're a knight. You don't have to have this ability. Being a knight means you use a sword. But you can purchase the equip sword ability and put it in that slot when you're a different character class. And now that character class can use swords.
Oh, yeah. So that's the other.
So you could have a chemist, which normally can use a dagger or a rod, I think. And like, oh, yeah, nope, they can use a sword now because I used in that slot, I use equip sword. Or armor.
So it's an augmentation. Yeah, it's
exactly.
a mutation or something. Yeah, I mean, that's the other cool thing that I wrote down. We didn't talk about in pre-show, but the stat increases being essentially ability in the ability slots, like movement +1 or jump.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a clever solution to that. Giving them more, and also just the customization, the
Customizability.
Yep.
It's been a long day.
It's been a long day. The customizability of all of, like, it's just a lot, but it's so cool, and then also if you look at each character's job, list, I guess I'll say, with each level of each job, you know what I mean? Like, the combinations are just so nuanced, and so you can really it is like the most elaborate multi-class version of design that you can have, because I can put 3 levels in this one and 2 in this one, and I guess you're
mix
always
and match those abilities, right? It's like, oh, I want to have the item skills of the chemist, although you won't be able to throw far unless you've taken the chemist's ability of like being able to throw things further, which is, I think, one of the chemist's abilities. What are they called? Squires. The squires have lots of kind of like low level, like they can throw the stone and dash and charge up. I think is one, or might be called accumulate or something.
But then still, when you select when you're kitting them out, you still have to select which one's active. Right.
Correct. So they're not all just.
So there's still a limitation there where it's like, I might have all.
You can't make the super character that can do everything.
Yeah. You still have to make choices, which is really cool, and you're still customizing. Even though this might be a monk, there's still a sub customization about what kind of monk they are.
Right.
And different flavors of that. They could be a monk, knight, chemist, wizard.
Yeah.
But it's just
mine's a monk chemist. I mean, I can't throw the items a long way, but because I want that slot for something else. But that's
so the chemist. One of the chemist thing is they can throw the things long ways.
Right.
I was wondering why I would have a chemist always be a chemist.
Yeah.
Rather than just get a couple levels and then get the items I need.
Yeah.
But
well, this is where the player goals come in for me. Is that I've found in the last 8 hours of play or whatever, that I've been doing a lot of like looking at what the abilities are and planning out like, oh, okay, I want to have this character be a chemist, for example, at least until they get 800 more job points. And in fact, I really want to focus on that. So because they took some levels in whatever, some other thing, I can't remember which one has this. There's one that has a like job points up, so you can actually increase the rate at which you get job points.
Oh, thank goodness. Because I was just about to ask that, because job points are so valuable, but some of these abilities are so expensive, the grinding, I just can't.
Yeah. So there's that makes that go faster, although not loads faster. You also just want to make sure you're using those abilities a lot. So just have tons of potions, or in my case, I have tons of high potions because potions aren't really worth it to me. But, so you have them, and it's like whenever somebody gets hurt even a little bit, just use a potion. They'll get the job points for that.
Skill-based. It's skill-based progression, so you need them to use. Yeah,
exactly.
I had that note down too. Even for white magic heals and stuff, it's like
correct.
Make sure your priest is always doing those things, even if you don't really need them.
Yeah, yeah. So I got the chemist up to be able to have auto potion, which means whenever they take damage, there's a chance they'll automatically use a potion. They'll use the lowest. I think they use the lowest available potion type. So I don't buy regular potions anymore because that's just 30 hit points, and everybody's got 100 and whatever hit points now. So it's like, okay, so now all I have is high potions, and I've got like 50 of them because I know whenever this character gets hit, they're going to get, they're going to use that auto potion, which is another reason I need to go back to the cities. You see how these things tie back together?
Yeah.
Really elegant how they all do that.
Yeah. The overworld, because it's such a modified version of a Final Fantasy, it's a map, tactical map, strategic map even. It's really interesting. I didn't realize how much they integrated that into the flow of the game versus it just being an interface for selecting missions, because that's how you get random encounters. That's how you now.
They'll use it for story moments as well, which will be cool when you get there. I don't think that's happened for you yet. So far, I think it's only been additive for you. But in the future, like a thing will get cut off. Like, oh, you can't go that way anymore.
Oh, interesting.
And so now what are you going to do? And there's story reasons behind that, and
lore reasons.
There's lore reasons. That's correct. So, so it's cool. I mean, I had that in my notes, and we don't need to go into it because you haven't seen it that much. I have tons of little story notes, like, oh, this is a cool thing.
Well, if I don't get there by the end, then you just need to
just giant
turn on the hose. Yeah.
There's a lot going on. As we pointed out the first week, there's so many names.
Yeah, we did talk in pre-show about thematically, though. If we're going to move off of the jobs and player goals stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, we can.
But yeah, thematically, it's not much to talk about deeply. But thematically, I also. I guess I think I just
the themes are coming. You're there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I just need to get used to Final Fantasy stories always surprising me because this one, we've talked about it before, but just like the political intrigue and all the different factions and the, how nobility and social caste, are playing into it and just different motivations for different groups and the whole Robin Hood kind of feel to some of it. And I don't know, it's just, resistance and are you on the good side or not? All those great themes.
Here's a note. Are we the baddies? Question mark.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with that, what's that show? I can't remember what that's from. It's some British show.
Oh no, I don't know that.
Oh, there's a classic, British comedy sketch where it's two, like, I don't know, SS stormtroopers on guard somewhere. Shit. in this skit, and they're like, it's one to the other. It's like, I've been thinking a little bit lately. Are we the baddies?
Yeah.
He's like, because kind of have all these skulls on our uniforms, and it's just it's going on in that vein. It's like it's pretty dark stuff, but because it's just this goofball guy. Like, are we actually not on the good side?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, there was a moment like that in the story, and I just wrote, "Are we the baddies?" Because I was like, "Oh yeah." But yeah, the social case stuff is really important to the early story. It's a lot about sort of, dehumanization, literally, in certain ways. And then of course, we talked about in the first episode how this is very medieval and not a lot of sort of heavy fantasy elements. Of course, that's all going to change. So be warned, it is still a Final Fantasy game. There is going to be some weird stuff that happens later. Because I knew there was, because I remember some stuff towards the very end of the game that I was like, oh yeah, this definitely goes some places. And finally a character mentioned, an event that happened in the past. And I'm like, oh, that's why I have to do this later in the game. Okay. I forgot that, but now I know how that gets set up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's good to hear then, because I think obviously part of it is that I'm wondering how it's a Final Fantasy game, but also good for them and I guess the others maybe do this to some degree. No, I think 6 does start off pretty, there's some early stuff where you're like pretty crazy, but I feel like when that stuff starts coming into this game, the contrast is going to be good. Yeah. Because the initial stuff does feel like pretty, mundane political intrigue, soldiers and fighters and things. You're meeting monsters, of course, in the forest and stuff, but when that stuff, gets wackier in the Final Fantasy vein, then I think I'll appreciate it more, because it's been such a high contrast. You want to pace that stuff out. You don't want to just start at 11 on that stuff.
Yeah, no, it's coming. So, and you'll know which character it is who's going to bring it, because, well, we'll see if you pick it up, but I'm pretty sure you will. Their name kind of gives away that there might be not exactly what they seem.
Okay,
I won't say more, because
all right, yeah.
We'll
see if I figure it out. The thing that because I'm not as far as you are in the story, the thing that I keep trying to remember and suss out as far as how it fits together is the opening, because that was in the future, right? So
you're going to catch up to that really soon.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah, it's not that far in the future, and the person is not who you thought it was at the time. It's somebody else.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, you're going to catch up to that very shortly. I'm pretty sure just a handful of story missions from where you are now. So
okay, because Ramza, is that his name? Ramza?
Yeah, Ramza or Ramza.
Yeah, he was wearing something very specific in that opening, because I had a memory of that, and I was wondering. And then also the sort of soldier guy that was in that I'm like, something's up with that guy.
Yeah.
But then Toledo was in there too. So
correct. Yeah. Yeah, I'm past that event. You don't see that event again directly, but it's referred to.
Interesting.
Which is another interesting storytelling choice of you don't actually go there and see it again or anything like that, but they assume that you are paying attention enough to know, oh, this is the person who was stolen and why, and this is what Delita's doing. Or here are some of what Delita's motivations might be. You might not know exactly what he's doing, but you have some ideas, and it doesn't sort of revisit that event directly and say, this is what I was thinking this is why I did this, or anything declarative like that. So it's very good about trusting the player to be following along. I've lost track of lots of character names. That's
there's almost too many. The families are too big or something. I don't know. There's a lot. Yeah.
But it is definitely Yeah, I mean, there's some good stuff coming up within the Beowulf family, and then some of their retainers, and all of that stuff that's pretty near in your future. And then now I've gotten to the point at the end of chapter 2 where it's like, oh no, what? What's going on now? So it makes a pretty big Final Fantasy swing at that point where you're like, okay, now I see we're in Final Fantasy territory. So
that's when the Espers show up.
Well, the Espers have already shown up. I mentioned summoners earlier, but they're not a big like go out and find them all in the world type deal in this one. So
interesting.
Anyway, well, we have a couple topics we haven't gotten to, and we'll just table them and do them next time. We'll talk about wall missions. In my case, one literally with a big wall in it. Objectives.
Is it a big snowy wall?
The music. No, that's good callback to that show I've never seen. But
I hear their books too.
And I hear their books too. There's a great mission where Ramza is on one side of this wall fighting a really tough enemy on his own, and the rest of the team's on the other side of the wall fighting a ton of enemies.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, see, I love that they definitely are trying to mix it up. They have their systems and mechanics and stuff, but I love that the scenarios themselves are starting to do some different things.
Yeah. And when you get to that point, I'll tell you what my strategy was, and you can tell me how many times you had to play it.
Yeah, it's
going to be a few. I'm not going to lie to you, because it is not. I mean, it took me a while to figure out. Oh, this is what I should do. I got part of it right early, and then I was like, and each time I would play, they'd be like, "Oh, I didn't know they could do that." It's like, oh man, I didn't realize they were this kind of character and they had that ability. Because you can't always tell all the abilities that they have based on their class, because they also are multi-classed. So that's a whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was cool. It was definitely a cool moment each time that iteration happened. Let's quickly turn to email. Let's try to get 2 in. I think. Well, we'll at least start with yours. There's no direct question, but I think implicitly we can make a question out of that one. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So go ahead with the email I sent you.
Okay. Final Fantasy Tactics, Memories, Thoughts on Exploits and Balance. From Drew. Hi, Drew. Hi, big fan of the podcast and happy to see Final Fantasy Tactics covered. I was born in 89. Oh, T-Swift.
Yeah, me too.
And playing this game right at release, I was confounded.
I'm sorry, did you say 1989? I'm sorry, I misheard.
Yes, that's my assumption. We're a T-Swift house, so... That's right.
I know.
I was confounded and couldn't get past the 4th battle, but eventually when I was older and returned to the game, it became my favorite Final Fantasy and a top 5 game for me. One thing I think Final Fantasy Tactics should be looked at for is that if you build a compelling combat and RPG system, ideas like balance are overrated. What? There are many elements to exploit in Final Fantasy Tactics, but many are optional or have to be discovered. Some you have to be cheap, some you feel smart when you get, and some the game just hands to you. Sometimes you get a way higher level OP character that you can choose to use as a crutch or not. I love that it's there if you need it. Most serious players look down on using these characters, but I love that kind of organic difficulty adjustment. Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. To really level my characters and avoid going into random grind battles, once the battle is won with an enemy or 2 left that are no threat, I have my party... I didn't see this coming.
Yep.
I have my party beat on each other in a low damage way as possible and heal each other to get XP while staving off killing. Oh my gosh, that last enemy or 2 gets the job done, Drew says. Yep. It's essential to my idea of how to play this game. What? I have Also, always been really into character building and development in RPGs, and this game hits those boxes and probably is the reason I am so into that. You have so many ways to make extremely powerful characters. Ninja Ramza is incredible, and in a series with amazing music, this game has the best of any Final Fantasy game. Thanks for the shows, guys. Drew. Yeah, I think the music so far for me is really astounding.
Yeah,
I don't
we'll
I don't know
talk
how
about
this series
with
is
one
so
of our
consistent.
topics. Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
But
Well,
they're all
Nobu
good.
Uematsu, and actually there was another main composer on this one, I believe.
Yeah, he's just
Apologies,
amazing.
I'll look that up
Yeah.
for next time.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess I would include Chrono Trigger in there too, but
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's just they nailed all that stuff. But oh my
For sure.
gosh, so
Yeah,
much
so
true.
balance is overrated, right, Tim?
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
I mean, I
really...
love the idea that you could take a character really far and be like, you know what, like that it's a valid strategy to do. Like, you know what, I'm going to put together a mix of abilities that I really like. That's going to make this character really powerful. Like, it's sort of like deck building, you know, in a Magic the Gathering, or, you know, pick your flavor of deck builder, where it's like you get these cards that are really sympathetic and they generate combinations that are just, you know, overpowering. Dominion, the original Dominion box set, had some, you know, some play that was like, okay, once somebody gets, you know, half of these cards, you know, because there's these small stacks of like 10 or 12 cards or whatever. You know, somebody gets all of those. It's like now their turns take half an hour to play because they play through their whole deck every time they, you know, every time they get a turn, and they just get a million action points and whatever, and they're just generating all this money or whatever. Like they just are these vibrations between the cards. Like, well, if you have this and this other thing, you know, it's like if you can get them all, you know, in your hand at the same time, then you have this great combination that just generates an engine, you know, of activity.
Yeah, I have this great deck in Marvel Snap that does that. That when all the stars align and the right cards come up, you know, you're just like, you just want to see the other person's face, because it's just like it goes from 10 points to, you know, 400 points of damage, you know.
And you're like, what happened? Yeah. And I think with this game, you know, you might go really, really deep on a character class and be like, man, this character's really, really powerful now, because as they level up their abilities, you know, or rather, as they level up in a class, not only do they get the abilities, which are really cool. Like, I have a lot of breaker abilities now with the knight. Like, you can break the armor, you can break the, you know, so it becomes like well, I was going to say a jack of all trades, you know, but a knight of all trades, I guess, where you can just like, I'm good against any enemy now because I've got all these different ways I can break what they do. I can break their weapon. I can break their armor. If they're really defensive, I can, you know, whatever it is. Magic, like there's ones you can take their magic away. Or the alternative is like, you know what? I take some pieces of that and I put it together with this other thing. And it means this thing that would normally be a weakness for me actually helps me if you do it to me, because I took from the other class that's strong against that one thing, you know, put that in the mix, you know. So now there's some other like weird thing that you would have to encounter to actually get through all of that. And when you do, it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I had a battle where two of my characters had the item ability, and they got charmed late in the battle when most of the enemies were dead. And so what did they do? They ran around and used Phoenix Downs on all the enemies.
Oh my gosh.
Those jerks.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, oh no. What do I do? I have to hit my own people if I can get to them, you know, but one of them was the monk, and the monk was really, really fast. So it's just like, it was a nightmare. Wow. I did not win that battle. And I guarded against it in the future. So I love that you can do this in these games. Yeah. I love that you can break it. You know, I do think the Lancer is the one that's kind of like baseline overpowered, because it's basically invincible much of the time. Like it jumps off the board and then comes down just on its target. The higher level it gets, the more distance it can cover and the more damage it's doing. So it's like, oh, it's a one-hit kill and you can't hit it. So it's like, that's
maybe that's what Drew was alluding to.
Yeah, pretty degenerative. Well, there are actually also characters that are written characters that have specific powers and abilities that come along, I believe, later, maybe in chapter 3 or 4, where, as he points out, like you can sort of lean on those characters.
That's the sort of story balancing that definitely helps people with pacing. Because games like this, it's hard to, no pun intended, but balance the pacing of things because you don't know what the player's going to have and stuff. So you put in characters like that to make a ebb and flow of things.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I guaranteed they tried to balance. I know what he's saying.
Yeah.
And I think the game is good because of it. I mean, it's leaning, in my opinion, too much toward grinding, but I think they all do. So it's kind of not surprising. But I just think at the scale of this, they just were not going to be able to totally balance.
Yeah, I mean, the deeper you go into the trees, like honestly, I think games where you don't get a big benefit from going deeper into the trees are kind of tedious.
Right? Yeah, if they're too balanced.
Exactly.
If they're perfectly balanced.
Why am I doing this? It's just the same thing through the whole game.
Yeah, you just want players to have those spikes and feel like they have outsmarted the game or OP'd the game. Totally. Right. That's why I mean, in an RPG, whatever, I'm playing one of the Fallout games right now just because of the show and I'm in the Fallout mood. I'm going to go level a crap load, before I go to certain places because I just want to own when I go fight a super mutant and not even worry about it.
Yeah,
so, I get it.
I mean, I like that too. So, I'm the person who will happily go and grind for a couple of hours, just to see like, oh, I want to achieve this player goal. I don't want to wait. I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to go and wait until I, through several story levels. Why don't I just do it now? Then I'll have it.
It gives you the option. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one thing I like. I'm not going to tackle another email. We are over time. And it's getting late here. And the sleep just is not coming. So got to take it when I can. So thank you for sending that along, Drew, to devgameclub@gmail.com. We actually have a bunch, as often happens with Final Fantasy or other Square titles. So we'll get to those as we get to those. If they keep coming, and we'll probably do a mailbag at some point. You can also shoot us reviews. We'd love to see those. We like to read them on the cast. And I get all the Apple ones, but if you have some other service you use to listen to your podcast and put a review in there, just let us know or shoot it to us by email so that we can read it. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com, on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram at devgameclub. My co-host here is twitching at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
Are we still waiting for the World of Ruin? Is that what's...
Yeah, I mean, we keep shifting.
Keep having it.
Record dates and
recording schedule.
Yeah, I keep canceling, yeah.
It's my fault.
No, this was my fault this time.
Yeah, but I think I was the last couple, so... but when he's back, you can check those out there. We have a fan-run Discord. There's a link in the show notes. Good crew. Go check them out. We're talking about all sorts of things over there. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton. Special thoughts go out to Kirk this week. Commissioned by friend of the cast, Aaron Evers. And our logo, the Discord, merch store, all that fun stuff by Mark Garcia with help from others. Have fun taking your whole life for granted this week. And good night.
Good night.